Hi everybody, Roy Brotman here. I am the liberal conservative. Bunch of stuff I want to talk about today. First, I want to say to my friends up north and some of my friends down here, I understand when you say that you don't like our current president because he isn't presidential enough. And if you really feel that way, that's you're certainly entitled to your opinion. But now we're canceling George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, Woodrow Wilson, both Roosevelts. Soon the only valid presidents that anybody can be able to look up to would be Abraham Lincoln and Barack Obama. Our president needs to be not everybody's best friend. He needs to be somebody that can run the country, and that's kind of the way I feel about presidents in general. If we get back to talking about canceling George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, people complain that, oh, well, they were slaveholders, and they talk about institutional racism and other forms of racism. And in the 1700s, in 1600s, 1700s, people owned slaves. Terrible thing. People shouldn't own themselves. I grew up as a Jew, and I know all about slavery. I hear it every year at Passover when we do the Seder. In that generation, in that century, slavery happened. And you can't blame people for having slaves when slaves were part of the culture. Again, not a great thing, but you can't cancel them and tear their statues down because they were slaveholders. Soon there won't be anybody left. I mean, we talk about institutional racism. Slavery wasn't institutional racism. That was racism. Well, that was the culture at the time. It wasn't necessarily racism. It wasn't issued based on race. It was more based on class. There were white slaves and indentured servants that were treated every bit as poorly as slaves in some areas. Slavery in the Middle East was, Arabs and other whites selling whites. As I mentioned, Judaism, where Jewish people were typically white people. They weren't black. We weren't black. So it isn't a matter of racism. Slavery isn't racism. Slavery is bad, but it's not necessarily a sign of institutional racism. Now, we did have institutional racism in the United States. We definitely did. After the Civil War, between 1865 and President Johnson signing the Voting Acts Right and several other civil rights measures and certain things that he did, acts that he did, and as far as Arkansas and other areas where he sent troops in to support people that were trying to segregate by law. That time frame was definitely full of institutional racism. Now, is racism? Am I saying there is no racism? No, I'm not saying that. There are racist people. In some cases, there are groups of racist people because they grow up together. They have the same demented, in my opinion, thoughts. But to blame the country to be racist as a tool of identity politics is in my opinion completely ridiculous. Pitting the country, one group in the country against the others is in itself racism. If you go back to the late 30s, when Nazi Germany was persecuting Jews, homosexuals, gypsies, 6 million Jews, but in a total between 9 and 11 million people that were killed by Hitler. The government was setting the populace against a specific group or several groups. That's institutional racism. The Armenian genocide, when Turkey killed 3 million Armenians because of their religion, that's institutional racism. Our country, while not perfect, is far from racist. In the 60s, the southern states, and unfortunately most of them controlled by conservative Democrats that were trying to maintain segregation, and a couple of cities in the north, Chicago, which is far from a southern city, but has been run by Democrats for millennia, has always been the most racist city in the north. And in some cases, a lot of people in Chicago are proud of that fact. Look, there's racist people everywhere, but blaming the country as institutional racism and trying to put that on the Republicans and this president or any president or any presidential candidate, since maybe exclude George Wallace from that. I don't understand how the left can claim that our country is racist. Our president, no, according to statistics, there are about 2 million people in the country out of 320 some odd million people that are far right, like tiki torches or survivalists or skinheads, neo-Nazis. And there's approximately 2 to 3 million people on the far reaches of the left. And I'm talking about Antifa and Black Lives Matter and some other groups that are kind of hangers-on to the left to take advantage of when a peaceful demonstration occurs, to take advantage of the situation to either destroy, injure, kill people, on bystanders, onlookers, the police, defunding the police. How do we expect to train police to be better if we think they're not, by taking their money away from them? People want to send social workers or psychologists to domestic disputes instead of sending the police. Now, the domestic disputes are probably the biggest trigger point for injury or death of any call, except for maybe bank robbery or terrorism, that a police officer would get. And by sending just a caseworker or a social worker or a therapist or something to try to talk that down, ultimately we'll get those people injured or killed. They will start to have to carry some type of defensive weapons, and soon they will become the police department. So again, I've had my run-ins in my life with the police. Believe me, I'm probably nothing like an African American or Black American has to put up with, because I hear nightmares. But because there are prejudiced cops, and 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 20 people die because of those cops out of, this sounds callous, out of 320 million people. That is an institutional racism. Institutional racism is going to emerge if the very liberal left, the fringe of the left, is allowed to get their way, because what they're going to end up having is they're going to cancel any opinion that's not theirs. In the old days, you had debates. I felt one way, you felt the other. We discussed it, we argued about it, we yelled about it in some cases, but we came to an understanding that we were both allowed to speak. Today, mostly on the left, if you don't agree with what they have to say, you're not entitled to an opinion. Now, I don't know how my friends up north that I hope are hearing this feel about that. I guess it reminds me of a child that doesn't want to hear something. They put their fingers in their ears. Mommy, don't tell me that I don't want to hear it. Ma. I don't know what we've done to that generation, because we were the previous generation, or maybe 10 year removed. But we screwed up royally to allow people to be indoctrinated into these cultures and not have the respect for people that don't share their opinion. People that have opposite opinions aren't bad. They may be wrong with your opinion. They may disagree, but to coin someone as bad because they disagree with you is the next institutional racism. Because what is going to happen is the left is going to eventually going to, I'm not going to say come to power, because that's a little bit, they're going to assume office, and if they continue to have to behave this way, they're going to shut off anybody that disagrees with them, and that's what fascism is all about. Just canceling the people that don't agree are going to lose their jobs. They're losing them now. They're going to lose their jobs. They're going to lose their livelihoods. In some cases, they're going to lose their lives. And just because of a disagreement. Getting back to what I said earlier about people not caring for the president. Perfect example. You might not like him. He's a New York bully. Okay. From a business perspective, or from a perspective of running the country, he's done everything he's promised. Now, that might not be your promises. That might not be what you want, what you'd like. But the man's done what he says he's done. A lot of my friends up north, he's a lie. He lies about everything. Yeah, okay, he might. There's a lot of second opinions I have on some of those things. But obviously, every politician lies. Everyone that's ever been a president has lied at some point. And they're not, they're obligated to protect us. They're obligated to make sure, our country is protected and not invaded, and our economy is good, and we have health care, and we can take care of ourselves. But he's not obligated to tell us everything that he knows. Especially when these things aren't criminal, or, again, just differences of opinion. I've checked several over the last 3 years lies that I've read in different, I forgot the groups that check the fact-checking organizations, both on the left and the right, and actually some that are pretty down the road. And you'd be surprised how many lies or things that are put out as the president, lies that the president has told, when they're basically things that haven't happened yet. They're opinions of things that might happen, things that may not happen. A perfect example is when he was going to pull the troops out of Syria. And many people in the Pentagon, and even some people in Congress on both sides that agreed or disagreed with him, thought that he should not do that. The fact checkers become all the president lied about that, because the Pentagon told him the president doesn't have to listen to the Pentagon. Should he? Maybe. Pentagon's been wrong too. CIA's been wrong. Just think about Bay of Pigs. So they're not always right. The point is that the president makes the final decision, whether you agree with that or don't agree with that. That's the way it is. You want somebody with a different opinion, or somebody that feels differently or feels more like you. When there's somebody available like that, vote for him. That's what you need to do. So again, let's speaking about. I mean, institutional racism basically is the majority of this talk. And even get back. I think about it. Black Lives Matter. Again, people hate when I say every life matter. Certainly Black Lives Matter, and I know BLM is basically set up to stand up for Black Americans who were injured or killed by police. Okay, then that has nothing to do with black to black murders, or black to white murders, or white to black murders, or anything that has nothing, anything that doesn't have to do with the police. I get that. Black Lives Matter started in Ferguson when, if you recall, Michael Brown was shot, and I can't remember the police officer's name because, again, this is all extemporaneous. Police officer shot him, and if you remember, his friends, and the story was, hands up, don't shoot. He was walking away from the police officer. And Black Lives Matter formed because of this, and basically Ferguson burned to the ground for a few days and took over and moved into St. Louis, and there was a real shit show for several days. And as it turns out, when eyewitnesses were spoken to by the police and the press, and again, this is a black community, mostly black community. Most of the eyewitnesses were black. They completely sided with the police officer. The eyewitnesses said, all but his friend, who said, he had his hands up, don't shoot, said that Michael Brown had his hands in the police officer's car. He was trying to get the gun. It appears he was trying to get the gun away from the cop. Then the cop shot him. Okay, well, different story. Okay, now, no person, black, white, or green, should be murdered in cold blood by a police officer. The George Floyd murder was atrocious. I don't think there's anybody on the left or the right that would disagree with that. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the aftermath of that. There were several peaceful demonstrations, and yes, there are peaceful demonstrations that turned into riots. And I'm not saying that the peaceful demonstrators are the ones that were rioting. I'm not saying that. But you bring BLM came in, Antifa came in, and again, the windows were smashed, the buildings were burned, the cars were burned, the police were injured, bystanders were injured, people were killed. And if you get through Minneapolis and then moving into Portland and to take over in Seattle, and the aftermath of this atrocity that happened to George Floyd being turned into an excuse to kill, maim, and destroy anyone or anything that you don't agree with. Again, opinion isn't an option. You can't disagree. If you disagree, you're canceled. Now, again, I don't know how many of my friends up north and or down here really feel that's the right thing to do. I'm talking about average people, me and you, people that go to work or pay our taxes or go to the store, and play some golf or drive or whatever. I'm not talking about the megalomaniacs or the serial killers or the murderers and rapists, pedophiles of the world. I'm talking about average people, and even average even our average politicians. I find that it's turned into even a joke, and I guess that's why the Congress has basically as bad a poll number as the media. They're both down below 10%. President is mid-40s. Congress, the House and the Senate, so low. It's because of, again, their culture. I have to say, this problem probably started the first term of Barack Obama's office when McConnell said his job was to make Obama a one-term president. Now, I voted for Obama the second time. Now, so now President Trump comes in. He dethrones Hillary, Empress Hillary, who had everything but the scepter and the crown ready to take office. And a lot of people were disappointed with that the first woman president wasn't elected. And hopefully a woman president will be elected, one that actually has the qualifications necessary to be president. But that's when it started. So now we have a president from the other party, and now the orders are on the other side. Take him down any way you can. So it's not. I don't think it's Trump's fault. It certainly wasn't Obama's fault. I think from the Republican perspective, I understand I know what McConnell meant to make him a one-term president. I think, again, from the left side, it's a different philosophy. The philosophy on the left is, if you don't agree with me, you're bad. On the right, it tends to be, if you don't agree with me, you're wrong. Okay, which is why McConnell wanted to make Obama a one-term president. And I loved Obama until, 2-3 weeks left in his office, when he first sent billions of dollars in cash to Iran, and then refused to veto the Security Council resolution about Israel, and that's kind of when I kind of went south. Again, Obama's I thought he was a great president. I think Trump, from a business perspective, is as good of a business person as he is, and as good as a president. He's as good as a Republican president can be. Democrats are going to behave one way. They're going to act a certain way, and they can have a certain philosophy. A Republican is going to be more of a business person, and not that he's looking to line his pockets from the business, but that's the philosophy, and that's the way Republicans think. They tend to want small government and low taxes, and Democrats want bigger government and higher taxes to support that, because they feel that the government should intervene in more parts of our lives. Now, regardless of what your opinion is on that, to me it's varied over the years. It's gone both ways. So again, today I may feel one way, tomorrow I might feel a completely different way. But all I'm asking and what I'm advising people to do is take the hatred out of the equation. Look at rational thoughts. Look at rational behaviors from us, from the people around us, and look and say, is this a rational behavior? Is it a rational behavior the way the left handles things and how the right handles things? And then when your mind is clear and you can really have a good perspective on what's going on, ask yourself, do I like my country the way it is? Do I like the economics? Do I like the opportunities? Do I like the taxes or the amount of taxes that I pay? And other things that are important. And again, if the arts, endowments to the arts, I believe in that. Even the president gave $3 million to the Kennedy Center in the first bailout. And again, so depending on how you feel and what your priorities are, you're going to vote that way. You're going to feel that way. But all I'm asking is to have a clear perspective. Don't cancel a person that disagrees with you. Debate him, argue with him if you'd like, scream at him. But everybody's voice deserves to be heard. You know, Black Lives Matter. And again, you're going to hate when I say it. Everybody's life matters. Well, everybody's voice matters. And listen to people's opinion. Don't cut them out. And we have to get a perspective on what's going on. And I think unless the left and the right, the left from the perspective that they have to kind of move a little bit closer to the center and not decide to cancel everyone around them. And the right, who when something like this happens gets nervous and crawls into their hole, like an ostrich, puts their head in the sand and wants to avoid any type of confrontation. And I guess we have a president sitting in the middle now who's basically a law and order president that wants there to be calm and wants there to be law. And law isn't burning down buildings or throwing bicycle racks through windows. And to the people that don't know what I'm talking about, and will say that I watched Fox. No, I watch Fox, I watch CNN, I watch MSNBC. And certain news outlets aren't telling you what's going on. They're not sharing it with you. When you see buildings burning, when you see people getting injured during demonstrations, that's not being staged. You really can't hide stuff that's been going on unless you don't show it. Okay? You can't stage it for the camera. There aren't enough people in the world that would keep a conspiracy like that quiet. But by the same token, you can hide it and not show it, and deprive 50% of the people or more in knowing what's going on. So I ask you, look at both sides and have some perspective. And this is Roy Brockman. I am the liberal conservative.